know, it may be Frugal February, but look what turned up in the mail yesterday. Woo! A huge package from Cult Pens. Now, I've been looking at these papers for a little while. I think they released them possibly either 2019 or 2020. It's only been very recent. And I decided I was going to look online to see what I could find on reviews of these paper. There's just nothing out there. There's a few star reviews when you look on various stores, but it's just not enough to give me a decent knowledge of what these papers are like. They are so horrendously expensive. I decided I would just grit my teeth and get everything. I thought I would jump on the bandwagon very quickly before everyone else has done a review and get one out to you, because I know that there have to be some of you wondering what these papers are like. My poor MasterCard. That is why we're having Frugal February, so I can recoup on this order and a few other things that I bought in January. So I'm going to peel all the plastic off and then we'll take a really good look at these papers. Alright, so I've peeled them and I'm finally going to look at this paper. Now, these are the same size. They are both 7x10, they have 20 sheets each. There's a 7x10, a 9x12, and a 12x16 inch. So those are the three sizes you can get in both the Lightfast and the Inktense pads. I can imagine that if you are a serious coloured pencil artist, you might want to go for the larger size. I have done no calculations to figure out whether you save more money buying the bigger one or the smaller one, but I just figured I'd get these. These are perfect for what I need, and 7x10 is not too bad a size because you can also cut it in half and come up with a 5x7, so then you get 40 pieces of 5x7. So both of them are 100% cotton. The Lightfast paper is hot pressed and the Inktense paper is cold pressed. Otherwise, they are pretty much exactly the same. They're both in natural white, so they will be not perfectly white. There will be a slightly creamy undertone to them, I imagine. So let's open the Lightfast pad first. Okay, and there's like a tiny mark on it. How annoying is that? But I'm just going to bring it up a little bit. It's very thick. Look how thick that is. And it feels pretty smooth, although there is still quite a texture there for pencils. I mean, there's a serious bit of tooth, so I imagine this paper will layer very well. Going on to the Inktense paper, this is the cold pressed one. And look, it's got a ding on it. It's like, I spent so much on this, I expect my papers to be perfect. Oh yes, there is a big difference here. I don't know if you can see that on camera, but this is very much a cold pressed texture. There, I think you can see that's a lot rougher, and that is for the water soluble Inktense. So to me, it kind of looks a bit like any other watercolor paper I've used that's 300 GSM. As you can see, it's very thick as well. So I am kind of wondering if these are worth it, or if you could just use any other cotton paper. I mean, I've got hot press paper and I've got cold press paper as well. So what I'm going to do in this video is a drawing on each of the papers. Now, because it's very expensive, I'm not going to swatch on this paper because I don't want to waste any of it. I'm only going to do drawings, and I'm going to make this it's a three-parter, so what I will do is a drawing on each of them today so we can compare them directly, and then I'm going to do a follow-up video swatching all of the Lightfast pencils and then probably doing another artwork, and then I will do the same with all of the Inktense pencils and an artwork for that. So look out for those in the future. Don't forget to click the subscribe button so that you can see when my next videos come up. If you hit that bell, it will notify you when the next one is available. Let's get into it. I'm drawing roses for Valentine's Day. I did actually cut a sheet of the paper in half just to make it a bit quicker to draw, and this is super sped up because this drawing still took me forever to do. I am using the Derwent Lightfast pencils on the Lightfast paper here. This is the hot press one, and can I say that right off the bat, this paper is just fabulous. I loved it immediately. All I'm doing here is just a really light layer of the colours just so I can see the picture. It's almost like an underpainting. And I was only very lightly touching the pencils to the paper, but it was just picking it up really quickly. And now I'm starting to go in with heavier layers, and you can probably see here that this paper takes loads of layers and the pencils blend incredibly well on it. I mean, normally when I used other hot press paper, usually Fabriano, Artistico. Even at this level, I find that there is still paper showing underneath. You know, you get those little white spots. On this paper, it did not happen anywhere near like that. It was so much easier and quicker to layer the pencils on and get rid of all of the white that normally at this point I'd be using something like an odorless mineral spirit to blend the pencils out, but I really didn't need to on these roses. You'll see I will use the mineral spirits a bit later because I did decide to actually colour in all of the background. I really wanted to see how far I could take this paper, but on these roses, just a few layers of colour and they were pretty much all coloured in. I was going quite heavily with the pencils on here too. I was using probably a medium pressure here, and it would have quite cheerfully taken some more layers on it. Even though the paper is a smooth hot press, it still does have a lot of tooth on it, but it also was a very buttery sort of feel when I was laying the pencils onto it. Now at this stage I really don't know if other pencil brands would work as well on the paper as the Derwent Lightfast, because Derwent did formulate the paper to work specifically with the Lightfast pencils. Both of them are incredibly archival and they are rated at 100 years or more, possibly under museum conditions, but I could quite safely say that these pencils are not going to fade at any time soon, not in our lifetimes anyway. I think that Derwent absolutely knocked it out of the park with the pairing of these pencils with the paper. It's absolutely beautiful, and I see why they call it a professional grade paper, because it is really designed for professionals. I mean, you do really need to spend a lot of time blending the pencils out and layering, things like that. I did have some time constraints here, so I did have to rush it just a little bit in order to get this finished. And you can see here that on the leaves I didn't layer them quite as much as I did with the roses, which I wanted to be the focal point. So if I have a bit more time I might go back to this and actually finish it in my own time, but I think I did enough so that you can just see how these pencils work. I figured that swatching really doesn't tell the story, and so it would just be so much easier to do an actual artwork with the pencils so we can see what they look like and how they work together. Marriage made in heaven as far as I'm concerned. The whole way through this drawing I was just going, wow, I love these pencils and I love this paper. So you cannot go wrong. Obviously the pencils are really expensive too, but in this case the paper and the pencils are both extremely high quality, and if you are looking to invest in some high quality paper and pencils, I think you couldn't really go wrong with these. Alright, now I'm going in with the background, and you can see I'm just doing one layer pretty much in a single colour, and then I come back with a few other blues. I just wanted to make it a dark background, but not totally black because that's a bit boring. And I was trying to use as many of the colours as I could within the set. I have finally managed to collect all 100 Derwent Lightfast pencils, and I will be doing a review on those probably in another week's time, and then I will be swatching them as well. But here you can see I'm using the odorless mineral spirits. Now I wasn't actually intending to use them at all, but then I thought, well, this is a review and it's probably a good idea to see if this works as well, because it is something that I use quite a lot. And it worked pretty much as I expected. Also, because the background area was much larger, it was going to take a lot more layers if I just coloured with the dry pencils, so I did use the mineral spirits just to speed up the process and take out some of the white of the paper, and then I just went back in with another layer or two or three, I can't remember how many now, with the Lightfast pencils, and then I just did a super quick layer of mineral spirits over the whole background. Here we go. Well, I could just go on layering this for days because it still has more tooth on there, and it would take, I think, another 2 or 3 layers on top, but I'm going to call it done for now. I also really want to draw a picture with the Inktense pencils, and I don't want to run out of time, so I'm going to say 10 out of 10 for this Lightfast paper. It's absolutely beautiful. It would have been 11 out of 10, but I'm taking 1 point off for the price. It's just a bit expensive, but otherwise the paper is fabulous and it works so well with the Lightfast pencils. And this, of course, has opened up another rabbit hole as to whether this paper works well with other pencils, like, for example, the Polychromos, the Caran d'Ache Luminance. I mean, there's so many tests I can do on this paper, but I think I'm just going to stick with the Lightfast pencils on the Lightfast paper today. But so far, I'm so impressed with it, and I'm really thankful that I bought it. I was really hoping that I would not have buyer's remorse, and thankfully, at least for the Lightfast paper, I don't. So let's see if the Inktense paper is just as good as this, or if I have a different opinion on it. So let me get started with the second artwork. I chose flamingos for this one because they're kind of romantic as well. And I'm going in straight onto the paper with the Inktense pencils, and as you can see, this paper is so much more textured. And I really only wanted to go in lightly to begin with because it's my first layer, so it does look pretty messy at the moment, but you will see shortly that once the paper is wet with some water, it does dissolve out very quickly. But it is pretty hard when you're starting to see what you're doing. Like, it looks such a mess at the moment. But here we go in with some water, and you can see that the Inktense pencils are dissolving pretty easily, so they work pretty well on this paper. And I found that this more textured cold press paper takes quite a bit longer to dry than hot press paper, and so I had a lot more time to blend those pencils out and eliminate that texture that you get from water-soluble pencils. I thought this was fantastic, and so I really liked this aspect of the paper. I've used hot press paper before and just ended up with really nasty, harsh lines of ink because it's dried before I can blend it into the next area. So I was very thankful that this took much longer and I could blend it at a slightly less frantic pace. Now, I also have the Inktense block set, and I really had not used it at all, so this is the first time I'm using them, and I decided that I would colour the background to see what it was like. They acted very much like the pencils when they were dry, and somehow I completely forgot to record a piece of footage, so magically they have been coloured in, and then I'm going over it again because, as you can see, that background is such a patchy mess, it's so bad. So what I did is I pulled the blocks out, and I've got a palette there, and I'm wetting the blocks onto the palette and then using it like paint, or ink if you want, and it was much better. It went on so much more smoothly, even though there's still a bit of patchiness there, and I really needed to do this a couple of times to get a more even layer. So I'll come back to that again in a while. I'm going in and drawing some of those details around the beaks and the eyes. Just adding a bit of yellow for the eyeballs, and then I will actually put the pupil in later once I've painted the eyeballs and let that dry. So you can see the black is very dense on there and very pretty. And then I've gone in with the original flamingo colours just to add in some more details and get some more shading going on. So I pretty much coloured the flamingos only with the dry pencils, and I found the second layer went down a lot more easily than the first. And finally, I'm drawing in the pupils of the eyes to kind of bring it all together. So really what I was trying to do now is just layer as much pencil. I even got the white out, and I was just trying to blend it so that it doesn't have that patchy look, which I find I tend to get with water-soluble pencils. I don't think I'm actually very good at them, and I'm not as experienced with those as I am with oil and wax-based pencils, but I got there eventually. I think it's just a matter of layering and layering some more, and happily this paper, because it is so textured, is just going to take as many layers as you want to put on. I mean, obviously if you drew really hard to begin with and you squashed the texture, then it's probably not going to work. But if you add the pencil layers on lightly, then you won't have any issues. And Inktense pencils are so incredibly vibrant that you really don't have to put down much dry colour at all, because once you paint it out, it just goes so much brighter. And I was using the white more just to make some of it a bit pinker, although even the reference photo shows them as more of a salmon colour than that more magenta-y pink that we often think of with flamingos, or at least what I think of. So overall, I enjoyed using this paper, and you can see that the flamingos are looking a lot better now that I've added that extra layer. And then I went in with another layer just using the pencils. The pencils and the Inktense blocks are matching, so these are exactly the same colours, just in pencil form. And you can see that with another layer of the pencil, it got much darker and I think a bit more even. I think even now it needs another layer on top, but I just decided to leave it at 3 layers for now, because goodness me, pencil work takes a long time, and I'm quite glad I cut these down into 5x7s. I would kind of like to use the really large 12x16 paper though and do one really big artwork. I think that would be so much fun. But I really enjoyed using these pencils today on this paper. I thought they were really nice, just a bit more difficult than the Lightfast one, which I'll explain in a moment. Okay, and here's this one. Now I could probably go over this background again any number of times. It's going to take more layers. I can still feel there's a tooth, but I decided enough was enough today. I really need to finish this whole video so I can get it up and posted for you. But I'm going to say that I'm giving this paper an 8 out of 10, more because of the fact that I found it harder to use than the hot press with the Lightfast pencils. This paper is very rough, probably slightly rougher than a medium cold press, it feels like. But having said that, it does take layers amazingly well, and it worked with both the pencils and the bars, so there was no issue there. It's just that this paper, I think, really wants to have wet media. So, I mean, if you did watercolour on it, it would be amazing. Or if you wet the Inktense beforehand and used it like paint, you would have no issues whatsoever. But I really wanted to use the pencils as pencils on this paper, and I think in that instance it is a little bit more difficult. But the positives, I will say that because it does take a lot longer to dry than, say, using a hot press paper, there is a lot more time to blend the pencil and take out most of the pencil marks. There are a few around, you can see just around here, and a couple of places where I could have gone over it again. But I also think that is the nature of using water-soluble pencils, that you will get some of that texture from them, unless you, like I say, use them like watercolour, but it kind of defeats the purpose of using them as a pencil, doesn't it? Now, some of this could be incompetence on my part, in fact it probably is, so if you are more used to using Inktense pencils on cold press paper, I think you would find that this paper is just as good, if not even slightly better than regular cotton cold press paper, though I really think that you would probably get a similar result on other high quality cotton cold press papers. So, in conclusion, would I get these papers again? Are they worth it? And yes, I think they are. I especially love the Lightfast paper. I would definitely 100% get this paper again, and indeed I would love to get the much larger pads, especially the biggest one, just so I could do a huge artwork on them. But I think in order to do that, I'll probably have to take a second mortgage out on the house at the moment, but never mind. I think I'm really going to use this paper quite a bit. I really love it, and I have absolutely no qualms about buying this one again. The Inktense paper, I think I have a bit more of a learning curve with it. I would be less inclined to buy this one just because I found it a bit more difficult than the Lightfast paper, which isn't to say it's not bad paper. It is lovely, it's really high quality, and I think if you're a person who does a lot of water-soluble pencil art, I think this paper would be really fantastic. Just bear in mind though that it is such a rough texture when you're laying the pencil down. It does take a few layers to kind of get it to look more like this, and the first layer or two looked a bit like a hot mess in mine, as you saw. So yes, I think this one has a steeper learning curve, but it has potential. I do find that Inktense pencils and things do actually work like ink rather than watercolour. There is a difference between them. So if you use like a Bombay India ink or a shellac ink or even liquid watercolours, I think these would all work really well also on this paper, and possibly the Lightfast paper. But personally, I think because the paper is so expensive, I really just want to use it for what it is designed. So Inktense pencils and blocks and things on here, and Lightfast pencils on here. I really hope you enjoyed this. I hope it helped. I know there's not much out there on this paper at the moment. This, of course, is just my opinion. but I think these papers are really beautiful, especially this one, and I hope that it helps you decide whether or not you want to buy the paper or not. Thank you all very much for watching this video. I hope you're all having a wonderful day out there, and I will catch you again really soon. Swatch you later. Bye!